What is the difference between blocking DHT and reducing DHT sensitivity, and what role does scalp inflammation and microinflammation plays into it? Let's talk about it. And if you are doing a treatment for hair loss and you want to get better results from it, then this is a video for you. And also if you are doing, for example, natural treatments, then definitely do watch this video. If this is the first time I meet, I'm Alex, and I'm someone who was struggling with a hair loss for almost a decade before I was able to regrow back my own hair. And now at the age of 31, I have better hairs than I had in my early 20s. And this just shows that it is possible to get results, it is possible to reverse hair loss, it is possible to stop the hair loss progression and also get long-lasting results. So let's dive into today's video about DHT sensitivity, about scalp inflammation and microinflammation. Let's start first with DHT itself. And DHT is connected to androgenic alopecia or the androgen sensitivity. And what happens is that the follicles, they get affected by DHT. Over time, they start to shrink, they mineralize, and eventually they can disappear as each hair cycle goes by. And this is a problem, and usual approach to it is to block DHT by, for example, natural DHT blockers such as saltpeter, pumpkin seed oil, nettle's root, pugum, or pharmaceutical approach with finasteride and dutasteride. And the difference between them is that, for example, pharmaceutical approach would block much more of DHT compared to natural approach to it. That being said, there is also other alternative approach to DHT. An alternative approach to address DHT is to actually reduce DHT sensitivity itself. The way it works is actually to work on factors that is causing that the follicles get sensitive to DHT, and approaching those factors can help to reduce the DHT sensitivity. And when it comes to those factors that cause actually more DHT sensitivity, it is often related to diet, trigger foods, gut health, lifestyle, stress levels, oxidative stress, and also scalp health and scalp environment and scalp problems or imbalance that is occurring there. So those factors, they affect and cause more DHT sensitivity. And if, for example, one does, for example, strengthen the liver, strengthen the kidney, do detoxification and do things to reduce oxidative stress, improve mitochondrial functions, then one can reduce the DHT sensitivity, and that again can help to reduce need for direct DHT blocker, right? So this is thinking behind it. And often one can approach it by combination of blocking DHT, but also reducing DHT sensitivity itself. And this is an approach I find quite wise, because what happens here is that one, first of all, is able to get better results from treatment, reduce daily hair shedding, and also get long-lasting results from treatment, right? So approaching, for example, combination of it can work very well. And for example, if someone is having early stages of hair loss, then actually reducing just DHT sensitivity can also be enough to stop the hair loss progression and also recover the hair itself. So where does scalp inflammation and microinflammation plays in? Let's start first with microinflammation. So microinflammation, it is more about sensitivity around each individual follicle. And what happens when you are having, for example, microinflammation is that there will be a lot of redness around each individual follicle. And that can be seen in microscope, for example. And there also could potentially be some itchiness on the scalps that happens in random times. For example, when I was having more stress, or after some foods, for example, that potentially could be trigger foods, one would notice that there is some itchiness around follicles in different spots on the scalp itself in androgenic alopecia area. And this is a problem, and it is ideally something that one should address, right? Again, you can get results from treatment if you are having microinflammation, but that microinflammation is not going to disappear. Even if you take finasteride, dutasteride, there still will be microinflammation, because what happens is that the microinflammation often is amplified by other factors, such as, for example, liver, kidney functions, such as oxidative stress, right? And also diet and trigger foods. So those factors has to also be addressed if you actually want to reduce DHT sensitivity and reduce that microinflammation around the follicles. And when it comes to that microinflammation, what is also very important is that your scalp stays in balance, right? So it is very important in balanced scalp environment, because if there is more excessive sebum, more excessive oil, scaling, flaking, those things will weaken the follicles and it will amplify the microinflammation. And if you, for example, look in the microscope, you will see that when you have those problems, you will see more redness, or more intense redness around each individual follicle, and especially in the androgenic alopecia areas, such as temples, hairline, crown area. When it comes to scalp inflammation is a much more severe issue than microinflammation. And if one is having, for example, scalp inflammation, then it will be very hard to get results from treatment, if at all, because scalp inflammation will just make the follicles so much more weaker, and also it will aggravate the certain microinflammation or DHT sensitivity to each individual follicle as well. So scalp inflammation is something that is very important to address. So when it comes to scalp inflammation, it is more about the burning sensation on the scalp, itchiness that is more severe. It is also something that often leads to a lot of redness, for example. And again, with the intensity of the redness, it also would depend on how much the scalp inflammation is occurring. And when one is addressing, for example, scalp inflammation, it has to be addressed in combination of scalp itself and also internally with addressing diet, trigger foods, lifestyle factors, stress management, because everything is connected. And when I was having scalp inflammation, I was suffering it with it for 2 years, right? And it did cause a lot of damage to my scalp. It did cause a lot of hair shedding. And when I was doing a treatment, the treatment completely stopped working when I was having scalp inflammation. When it comes to addressing scalp inflammation, also microinflammation, like what I always recommend, for example, my program in the workbook is to do topical applications, right? So topical applications that has a calming effect on the scalp, that helps to address the skin tissue, skin barrier itself. They will help you over time to reduce that inflammation on the scalp, right? And again, things that can work for this kind of problem is, for example, water rinse, for example, honey application. It is also things such as Dead Sea salt, Epsom salt, right? So those things can help you to address those problems, right? And I have been there myself for 2 years. I was doing the scalp inflammation for 2 years, but since 2013, I never have had any scalp inflammation problem at all. Like I have had times when I had some bit more microinflammation on my scalp, which I can easily spot with microscope, but scalp inflammation has completely been gone since 2013, right? And this is very important and essential if you're going to get the results from the treatment. So next logical step is to how to actually address it. And so you have to do topical applications on your scalp. That's one thing. You have to work on internal factors. The second thing, but you also want to make sure that there is nothing in the environment that is affecting your scalp itself or causing more inflammation or more microinflammation. And that could, for example, be shower water. And this is important because if you are, for example, using a shower filter, but at the same time, let's say you are using also topicals that require more stronger treatment. Let's say, for example, you have a shower filter that makes water too soft. That will also be a problem, right? So because that water is not going to be able to wash out topicals. And I also see a lot of guys do mistake with using a ketoconazole shampoo or other medical shampoos to address, for example, microinflammatory problems. And the thing with those shampoos is that yes, they can have a positive benefit short term, right? But long term, if you keep using them, then they can also, first of all, weaken the follicles, they can unbalance the scalp environment, and they can also weaken the hair itself, right? So I don't recommend relying on medical shampoos to address microinflammation on the scalp itself, right? So it is fine to use them short term to address specific type of problems. Let's say, for example, is there fungal issues or bacterial issues, right? So using those medical shampoos can be very useful to address them. But if you are relying on them long term, it will be a problem for your follicles, it will be a problem for your results, and it could potentially lead also to the setbacks. So I don't recommend doing it, and instead focus on actually working on the reasons why there is so much microinflammation in the scalp, why there is so much scalp inflammation, right? Those factors will help you to recover from the hair loss without being dependent on, for example, ketoconazole shampoo forever. So to summarize it for you guys, if you are addressing hair loss and you want the best results possible and also make sure that the results stay that way, it is important to have a multidimensional approach to the hair loss. So you have to have a full overview, what is occurring, what is potential weak spots that you are having, for example, in your lifestyle, in your diet, in your treatment, in terms of your gut health, in terms of your scalp health itself, right? You have to look at overall picture, what is occurring there, and then you need to select what weak spots you need to work on, right? So if you just rely, for example, on DHT blocker, let's say, for example, Finasteride and Dutasteride, what happens is that those DHT blockers over time, they will become less and less effective, right? And that again will require that you either step it up to stronger or more potent approach, but that again can lead to side effects, and it is really not addressing the root cause of the problem, right? So working on the DHT sensitive, working on microinflammation, scalp inflammatory problems is much more important to solve those issues, right? And then again, if you are, for example, blocking DHT directly, then it will require much less of DHT blocker compared to someone who is not addressing DHT sensitive, not addressing scalp inflammation, not addressing microinflammation. If you are someone who don't want to connect all those dots yourself and waste time and energy on it, then best action you can take right now is to get hold rapidly of a formal workbook. And the workbook has all the essentials you need to recover from those problems, right? It's simply structured with the logical steps that you can simply and easily implement right away, right? And the workbook itself you will be able to find below this video, because workbook will help you to simplify approach to the hair loss and give you understanding what you actually need to do in terms of addressing the problem as efficiently as possible and recover from this issue once and for all. Thanks for watching, see you guys, and see you next one. And let me know in the comment section what you found useful in this video, and we can catch up there.